Thank you so much for tuning in to She's All Over the Place with Kiriaki. That's me. Hey, this is Kiriaki.
And Nikki Scorpio.
You have just tuned in to the Sophisticated Psychos Experience. Today, we have Tom Lawless, the one and only president of VOX, a voiceover agency in Los Angeles, California. Here we go. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1. I am so excited. Seriously, the guest we have today, Tom Lawless, the president of VOX, I'm just screaming over here. I've been so nervous to put this podcast out. It's just like this giddy feeling, you know? I just love voiceover so much. This episode was actually recorded prior to the pandemic, prior to lockdown. So it's really juicy information, and it's going to be a great show today. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy, and I'm in gratitude. And yeah, the thought of today is just gratitude. So what are you grateful for? I grew up running cross country. I'm all about the short-term goals, medium-term goals, long-term goals. I'm in it for the long haul, you know, loyalty to the bone. I'm a Scorpio. And right now, you know, it's September. So we're in the fourth quarter of 2020, and we have an opportunity to just go for it. We have the opportunity to take massive action, okay, and make a great impact. So that's what I'm all about. I hope to inspire you. I hope to enrich your life. I hope to hear from you. Reach out to me. You can just go to Chonacas.com, send me a message. Any way you want to connect with me on social media. You know how it works. Just Google and make it happen. So, with no further ado, let's get into, the episode with Tom Lawless. Woohoo! Hi, Tom.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
All right, cool.
So I wonder, what's one of your favorite all-time books?
One of my favorite all-time books? That's an interesting question. Well, it's interesting. One of the books that really stood out to me over the years is one I read back in high school, actually. And you can probably tell about the things I watch on TV and things like that since. And it's called In Cold Blood by, Truman Capote. And just a fascinating story about, fascinating in one sense and disturbing in many senses, where a couple of guys went in to rob this small-time, this family in this small-time town in the Midwest. And things went a little haywire and ended up killing the family, which obviously rocked this little small town. But then it also was a fascinating story just about the criminals themselves, because, as many people know, Truman Capote got to interview and know these people, particularly one of the characters, very closely. And so it was fascinating to kind of have perspectives on them as humans, as well as not discounting the tragedy that happened and the effect that it had, obviously not on just the family, but the entire town and the entire region. And I guess, growing up in a smaller town myself, it was easy to see how that would affect, me, my family, my friends, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just one of the best written books I'd ever read, and I've really never really found its equal in that sense. So,
wow,
it's one of my favorites, and now I'm reading other books about serial killers and all that kind of stuff. So it's like it piqued an interest, and it scares me how much it interests me, but it does. It's fascinating stuff.
Very cool. So speaking of growing up in a small town, so I read the bio about you, and you came from a small town, and then you basically worked your way up into the company, and now you're part of such a diverse and eclectic team from people with different beliefs and backgrounds, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I think it's super cool.
Yeah, thanks. It has been kind of an interesting journey in that sense, and I did I grew up in a small town on the East Coast, south of Boston. And
where exactly?
Town was called Duxbury. So it was basically in between. It was on the South Shore between the Cape and the city and Boston. And it was, yeah. I mean, I loved growing up there, and I have some lifelong friends still, from there. And it really was a magical childhood. But at the same time, it was pretty one-dimensional in terms of the folks that we were interacting with and dealing with, and and that at the time didn't really think much of it, and it was just what I knew, and it was and again mostly great folks, and it was fun. But as I went to college and expanded on that a little bit, it was one of those things where I realized I wanted to see more and experience more. And when I graduated college, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do really, but I knew I wanted to either travel abroad and see some things, or travel across the country and see some things, and ended up doing the latter with a buddy of mine from high school. Actually, we took a few weeks and drove out, and it was a blast, and one of the best decisions I ever made, really. Because one of the few things I did realize when I was young was that it was like, look, if I get locked into a job somewhere, I may not have this kind of freedom again, this kind of time to do it. So I was glad I did it when I did, and came out here and was out here for a few months, and was enjoying it, and wasn't quite ready to go back, but I was starting to run out of money, so it was time to get a job. And so ended up at the agency as an assistant, and it's one of those things that as I was here for a while, and as I got to work with the company for a while, it really eye-opening in the sense of there was just a greater mix of individuals and ethnicities and backgrounds and beliefs, and it was one of those things that just continued to enrich, and it was, after a while you start to realize, like, I don't think I could live any other way than having all these perspectives around and things to bounce off of and talk to. I don't think I could go back to that idyllic life I had before without, certainly it'd be a much different perspective. So it's something that I've always really liked about the city. It's always something I've always really liked about the company. Between the folks that work here, the folks we hire, our great clients, it's just a great mix of folks, a great mix of that, and it provides great perspectives that to this day I really appreciate.
Very cool. Now, another quick question is, because voiceover for a lot of people is like a fun secret world that people don't often think of.
Right.
When you came in to get that job, was it intentional for you, or was it, oh, these people are hiring, and like what was it that made you decide to
Definitely
get into
the second part. No, it was I actually I was out here and talking to my sister, and she's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, again, at the time out of college, I didn't know. I was a finance major, and I knew I didn't want to just jump to New York into that world. But I didn't really know.
Where were you educated?
Villanova, right outside of Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah, sure.
2-time national champ the last 3 years. Anyway, exactly. Go Jay Wright. But yeah, so when I was out here, she's like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe I'll try something in entertainment while I'm in LA. Sounds interesting." And she had a cousin, her best friend from college actually had a cousin that worked out here in the business, and she's like, "Maybe I could set up a dinner, and you could pick his brain and stuff." I'm like, "That'd be great." So I did. At the end of the dinner, he's like, "Okay, it was great to meet you. You clearly have no idea what you want to do." I'm like, "Correct." But he's like, "We are looking for an assistant at our company, and we do voiceover, and I'm like, "What's that?" Whatever. And
Voiceovers.
Exactly. Like it was an interview. It was an opportunity. So I said, "Great." And so I ended up getting the job and taking it, probably in part because I was probably the only one who would take it for the money being offered at the time. But I was young, out of school, and needed the work, and got into it, and it was one of those happy discoveries that many people make once they get into the world of voiceover, and you realize, like, wow, this is really pretty interesting, and a fun form of acting, and a different form, and in general, I also found, granted, I didn't have a ton to counteract it, but from what I had heard, I really liked all the people that I was working with, and a lot of the actors I was working with, and it was a different, and I don't know, it's because you're not on camera and you're not thinking in that vein term all the time, but just the folks in general just tend to be great and very giving and very supportive, and there truly is, when you see folks with the talent to be able to create different characters and be able to different things, it's astonishing especially when you get to see the best of the best, which I've been fortunate enough to do over the years.
That's so sweet. I particularly love voiceovers because, everyone's out of the box and everyone's their own character. And it's so cool because they want you to go big. They rather have you go big because you can always go small.
Easier to bring it down than it is to build you up, for sure. And the freedoms that it provides, where there are certain roles, all actors won't be able to play on camera because of the look, because of certain things. And there's a limit, that gets thrown out the window with voiceover. I mean, you can really, we've had, I've had men play Puerto Rican women in characters, and there's things along those lines. So there's that kind of freedom that you just simply can't get, on the other side. And it's fun to watch those that can truly take advantage of that and have fun with it.
What are a couple of your favorite animation shows of all time?
Ooh, that's a good one too. One of my favorites, I loved the Penguins of Madagascar, the show that was based obviously off of the film. But John Dimaggio is a client here, is one of the talented actors on the show, and I got to see a couple of the episodes recorded in person, and it was just one of the most clever, one of the funniest, kids loved it, adults loved it. It's literally one of my favorites of all time. And like most people, The Simpsons is pretty extraordinary in kind of its own unique thing. And that's one of those that, again, obviously I was watching it when I was a kid, and even to this day, you'll turn every once in a while like, Simpsons episode, and you'll watch it, and it's and it's still great. It's still fun. So that truly is, from someone who's worked in voiceover and obviously seen thousands and thousands of animated shows from start to end over the years, what they've done and what they continue to do is pretty extraordinary. And it's just it's the one-off. It'll never happen again. It's, it's kind of like one of those things, but it's fun to be around while it's going on and, in the middle of it.
Yeah. And then what's one of your favorite animation movies of all time, or one that you like?
I do think Up is probably my favorite.
I love Up, yeah.
Just really an amazing, and not just because we put Ed in it, and Ed's the lead. That was great as well, but it really was. I mean, as most people say, like those first 10, 15 minutes, it was extraordinary. I'd never really seen it in an animated film, the way it touched you like that, and just start to finish, it was just it's just a beautiful movie that I can watch anytime it's on, this and that, or somebody's never seen it before, you're excited to show it to them and all this kind of stuff. It's just it's a beautiful story, and it was just so well done, and it's just so much fun, and certainly being, a little biased on the sense where we were able to see some of it as it was being developed and as it go, and then to see the final product, it was extraordinary.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so for educational purposes, what do you think people who want to get into voiceovers, certain steps they should take?
Like, for example, I didn't know about voiceovers, but I knew I could do all these different voices.
Right.
She actually showed me the steps to take, and I took the steps and I connected with Alyssa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I have a unique voice,
Right.
and for somebody who doesn't know, or maybe somebody who is in a smaller town, what would be the steps?
Yeah, it's interesting because of the fact that technology has really opened up the game to people all over the country, because of the fact that, like, you can go get a microphone, you can jump on a pay-for-play site, not that I endorse those, but it's possible, to kind of get the ball rolling and get started. That kind of thing wasn't possible when I started. Like, it was actors in New York, Chicago, and LA that were, represented, and they would go in into their agent's office and audition on a daily basis. And those were the only folks that were really getting in the mix. Nowadays, because of the technology and the fact that there's, not only can you audition all over the place, but there are more and more voiceover centric opportunities in more than just the major markets. And so, oftentimes you'll say to folks, well, you should go, take a class and do some of the, to kind of get your feet wet into what the process is and how it works. And obviously that's certainly the case and something you can do in these markets, but you can do it in a lot of different cities these days. There's more and more opportunities out there because it's becoming a bigger thing. And it's, we used to call it the best kept secret in the world. Not anymore. People are really starting to like, oh, you make that much money and you do that. It's like, okay, there's a little more to it, but that can be the final result, and it's exciting. So, but yeah, I do, it's still the basics of, finding that class, and there's different things things you can do if you're not in a major city, where there's more and more online references that you can start to go to, and online courses and things of that nature, where you can go and some of it is just to get an idea of exactly what you're talking about. Like, how does this even work? Like, how do you even get started? How does this happen? And so there are more and more avenues that you can go to at least get that ball rolling. And then, to your point, what you said before, a lot of it too is one thing people don't realize is just how important just networking is, and just getting to know people that do work in the industry, and kind of what I talked about before with VO being so great in terms of talent really helping other talent and doing other things. People in general want to help, and so sometimes that helps me, says you shouldn't be doing this. I've heard your demo,
right.
But and I believe that, but also it's like if you know someone that's in the industry, and even to a degree, ask them a couple questions. They're usually happy to help me. Like, yeah, you should talk to so-and-so, or you should do this and this and that. And so it's just about gathering that information and starting to, as you gather that more and more, you start to realize the folks that are really serious and have done this for a while, and, probably the folks that you should be talking to, and other folks that, thing that's dangerous about this whole thing expanding is that there are going to be folks out there trying to take advantage of folks that just want to get into it. And so
who don't know.
So
what are some things like that are no, don't do, so one isn't taken advantage of if they don't know?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because you really, there's not usually a giant red flag that you can notice right away, in the sense of, unless there should be some sort of credentials, right? When you're looking at, some sort of a coach or things of that nature, where you're like, I've worked with so-and-so and I do work on this and I do work on this, try to research that as much to see that these people are working on real projects and they're, have worked with real talent and, things of that nature, so that you're not just jumping in when somebody said, hey, I did a couple of spots in Idaho for this, I know what I'm doing, and you're like, no, you don't, so,
yeah.
It's trying to do as much due diligence on your side and research on your side to go, this person's in the game, this person's, I can't tell. And if you can't tell, there's others out there, keep looking.
So speaking of research, can you list coaches you recommend or casting directors, so people can go to their websites? For example, Bill Holmes is an amazing one.
Yeah.
So maybe, so when people are listening to this, they can then go on further in their research to look up maybe some websites or coaches that you admire, have relationships throughout the years, or someone.
So you're trying to get me in trouble, so the folks I don't mention will come after me. I get it. That's all good.
Well, we only have so much time.
Right,
so.
Exactly. It's very limited. But like you met, like Bill's great.
Yeah.
Bill at Compost Productions, great at, because there's some folks that will do coaching. Some folks are really good at producing demos. Sometimes they're separate skill sets. Sometimes they're both, like Bill's good at both. And it's also good to, when you're doing this, sometimes you want to make it as worthwhile as possible. And so a lot of casting directors are also doing classes and are also producing demos these days. And, it can't hurt to get in front of a casting director, work with them, and then hopefully you get something out of that. If you really impress them and do that, they're going to keep you in mind for stuff that they're working on as well. So you can it helps with that, notion of, doing networking while you're learning, which is great. So that, Kalmanson always does a great class. Elaine Craig, Carol Kimball, really like those guys here in town. And so like there's things of that, like I said, where you can kind of kill two birds with one stone a bit, by working with them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Plus, with technology, you can always like Skype people and everything. It's funny talking about Bill. So while we're on the way here, we popped into a coffee shop and the guy's like, here's your large blah, 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 mocha latte. And I'm like, oh my God, you need to do voiceovers. I'm like, you're going to be the guy, because I get more I really thrive on like animation. Sure. If there's like a music background thing, the commercial ones, I'm still honing in and, and finding that golden voice, but I'm like, you're going to be the guy that's going to get it, and he's like, thank you so much.
He's like, you're changing my life as we speak. He was so grateful. And he wrote down Bill Holmes' information.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And I send I've sent so many, over 100 people to Bill Holmes, because he introduced me to you and to Vox over 2 years ago. And I'm so grateful, and I'm loyal to the bone. So I am so grateful, because it's
you are great like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and it's true. And the one nice thing, not the one nice thing, Bill. There's many, I'm sure, but he's good about, like, he'll teach and he'll do stuff, but he's also not going to sell you a bill of goods when it's not there, which again can be tricky sometimes, because coaches in general, they get paid because you pay them to teach. And so some of them try to drag that out a little bit, try to do it. And Bill's great about going, this is, maybe you want to concentrate more on this or this and that, like even sometimes when you're talking about specific markets, because not everybody does cross over to, whether it be animation, video games, commercials, promos, trailer, like they're all their own thing. There are some clients that work in all of them and do it very well, and that's great. And there's others that only kind of their strength is in one of them or maybe one or two of them, and that's okay too. So it's about finding that and really trying to put your effort and your money oftentimes, because they're each their own demos and those types of things. And so you want to start to make those decisions based on, what you think your best trajectory is. Yeah. He's great about leading that charge for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're very, very popular. Last week we went to it was the E3 Expo happening for voiceovers downtown, and gratefully through you, I booked some roles on Minecraft.
Yes, you did.
And then the team, had this beautiful party. And I mean, Tom, like everyone kept coming up to Tom the whole time. He was the most popular guy in the whole place. Very, very popular.
Call that 20 years in the business. It's interesting because it's, people all the time say, like, it's tough to break in. It's kind of, and it can be at times, but it's also an interesting thing in that it's like a fairly decent sized high school. It's a small little community, and over the years you just get to know people. And the one thing that we try to do has always been, not that it's unique to us certainly, but I mean, you build relationships and you build relationships to last, and not just try to squeeze over somebody on one particular deal to squeeze every last dollar out of it. It's more about building that relationship so they want to keep coming back, and you create stuff together and continue to build off that. And, I think we've been able to do that over the years, which is great. And, we've got a great relationship with most of the folks that we work with because, we do good work for our clients, but we're fair and we're responsive and hopefully they appreciate that. And it's, we don't, probably do as many as those gatherings as there used to be in the VO world and stuff. So it's, I appreciated going to that with you. That was a lot of fun. And it was good to see some folks I hadn't seen in a bit. So, so it was great.
And there's a gathering tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of gatherings.
There is a gathering tonight. There's a gathering tonight of VOX clients itself. So that'll be, that's always great. And it's, it's one of those things that we try to do. Again, back in the day, clients would always come to the office to audition. And so we'd see them on a daily basis. And it was great. I mean, it was great to see them. It's one of those things after a while, you realize like it does affect the workday a little bit if you're always talking to clients that are in the office and you're not talking about them on the phone. And so, having most of the clients, pretty much all the clients read from home these days. And it's certainly efficient. It's certainly the way the business works. But at the same time, we don't get that face to face. So we try to have a couple of events throughout the year so that we can, we don't have to talk business, just take time to see everyone and they can see us, and it's still a relationship business. And that's still the best part of it and the most fun to me. So I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. The first event that I went to, a VOX event that I went to, I was surprised to see, it's surprising to see all the different, it's like old, young, black, white, left, right. Like there's, it's so cool. I'm like, wow, there's so many different kinds and styles of people.
Well, that's what's interesting too, because sometimes people will ask like how many clients you have, this and that. And some you're like, oh, probably around 300 scale clients. I'm like, oh my God, that's a ton. It's like, actually it's not, we keep our list pretty tight, but because of, what you're describing, like there's, voices from teens to, in the 70s and 80s, different ethnicities, different languages, different all this stuff. And so, that's actually a fairly small number given everything that we cover. And, but it's a great mix and it's a great, that's why those events are so fun, just because it's such a great variety of folks and but all they're doing, kind of with the same common thing.
And on the talent side, I mean, when I get an email, it's like, it's a kid in a candy store. There's so much fantasy because you never know what you're going to get. And it's just like seeing like your name and it's so cool. And it's like so professional, but it's so fun. And it could be for a video game or it could be for animation, a movie, a TV show. And it's always different. I could be playing a little boy or like a little girl fairy or like a woman in her 30s or 40s, kind of sultry. So it's like, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's every day. And it's like, it's constant. Well, I mean, it's like flooding in most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a 12-hour turnaround. And people would probably think, oh my God, a 12-hour turnaround. But the cool thing is, as an actor, you can read it right from your iPad. Because, you have the mic and then and the soundproof and everything. And then you can just read it. So when you're not reading it, you're making character choices.
Sure.
And acting, you have to memorize, and it's so much pressure. In this, the turnaround is so much quicker. And then like you're recording it. So if you want to do another take or like edit it or like just redo the line, you can just like you're directing yourself.
It provides you with that freedom to kind of be able to do that. And it was funny because that was actually when we first made the move to kind of exclusively have clients recording from home. The biggest challenge was probably dealing with that freedom, because you're used to going in and be like, da-da-da, that's it. Do you want it like this? Da-da-da, and you're done. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, I have hours to work on this. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge was making sure that it didn't trip up people, in the fact, like, because you don't, the thing that usually works in VO is most of the time you take a look at it, you get an idea with it, and you go with it. And that first take oftentimes is the best angle to it because it's fresh in your mind. It's what you're thinking. The one thing you don't want to do is kind of squeeze the organic quality out of the read because you're overanalyzing what I should do with that word or this word, and that can be tricky, especially in the beginning, like you said, when you're used to having it one way, and then all of a sudden you have that freedom to play. But overall, that freedom to play is a great thing because it does allow you to kind of just say, all right, take it back. And, you can do a take and then 2 hours later go, oh my God, I thought of something else I'd really love to do with it. Well, you can try one out and send it in usually. Like you don't, you're not completely restricted to that, to that moment when you're in the booth. So, take advantage of the positives of that freedom and then limit the negatives that can come from it. That's the best advice I can give.
Yeah. I remember actually one time, I was with her and we were driving and she gets a rush call for a voiceover and it was for giggling. And so we're in a parking lot. She had like a blanket or something in the back of her car, and she pulls out her phone and she just and there's a blanket over her head, and I'm watching people pass by, right? It's like get this visual, and she's just like giggling under this blanket. They used that actual voiceover. They were like, "That's good," and that's it.
Yeah, we don't need it redone. We're good.
Yeah, so it's like technologically where we're at right now. It's so amazing because I definitely do a lot because a lot of times I'm moving around and it's nice to be able to have there's apps now you can do all the editing on your phone and it's great quality, but it's definitely technologically it's a great time to do things, and it's nice to be able, like you're saying, to really make it yours and to not. It's important. Like there's been times where I've booked things where I just did something that reminded me of my childhood, and that was what got it because they laughed and were just like, we have to meet you. So it's
right, exactly. And I do think that's an important aspect to it, where because there's so much competition, and you get your scripts and you get the specs on what they're looking for and this and that. Oftentimes, so many people try to overdo it and like, all right, would they want it like this? But they're saying this, but they're saying this. Usually, it's somebody that comes in and just kind of goes, use that as a guideline. I'm not saying you disregard it completely, but you give your own spin on it and you give your own take. And when you're listening to hundreds and hundreds of auditions, which happens quite a bit, it's usually those ones that like, oh, that's a little different. It catches their attention, and oftentimes can be the differentiating quality that lands the job.
And the cool thing about the industry, you were saying everyone's doing it from home nowadays. It's where, like, let's say the client, the talent is in LA or New York and they book a job, then a lot of the clients are out of town. So they just find an engineer studio and pop you into a studio. It could be in Kentucky or Atlanta, wherever. And you just go in the studio and doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Most of the time, that's the case. You'll still have every once in a while a producer is like, I don't want to pay another studio fee. I don't want to, and you're dancing around with that a little bit. Or sometimes if there's a partner read, they want them in the same room. But you're right. For the most part, it's, you can book anybody anywhere, and there's studios everywhere. And, we've got clients recording all over the world, not just all over the country. And, you'll find a studio at 4 a.m. in Australia that'll open up and have you go in and record a couple of spots. It's just, it is a global game. And voiceover is certainly at the forefront of that. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because we will get some of it still, like even to this day with all the sound effects that you can do on your computers and other things, they will still have auditions for things like that, like talk like a parakeet. Okay.
And then they'll say in the audition, don't do any voice effects. We want to have it raw and we'll do it in post.
Right.
And it's almost like you don't need to audition a lot of people. You could just have a couple people because you can just manipulate the voice. Right, exactly.
Like that, to each their own.
How many people, like per project, is it different? Or like, is there like a number of like per commercial or per project animation TV show that people will audition?
Sure. No, for us, no. Like there, every once in a while, certainly you'll get a specified max amount that they want to hear. Sometimes they're like, just send us 5, just send us 10. But unless they specify that, it really just comes down to what the project is. And sometimes they'll be that specific in terms of how many auditions they want to receive.
Which 5 or 10 you talent you send it to?
How about told you lately how attractive you are? No,
right. Exactly. I mean, so, like what we'll do in that case usually is say they want 10 or so, we'll probably audition, we'll limit the number of people we send, but probably like 15 to 20. And then we'll take those reads and we'll pick the top 10 and send it out.
Wow.
It doesn't happen as much anymore. Most of the time it's still pretty open in terms of what they're looking for. And so at that point, it depends on the project, depends on the character. It depends on, like, sometimes if it's, if we're talking about a major TV campaign that's looking at, sometimes they'll come in like, males, 25 to 45. You're like, and they don't really have too much of a thing. It's like, you're going to get a lot of reads because we got a lot of guys in that mix. It's a big time campaign. We want to get as many people, as possible. And then other times you'll have stuff where it's very specific about an age range or a specific vocal type that they want, maybe for a local radio spot here and there. No, or we'll probably send you our top 5 to 10 because that's about what makes sense as far as, what we have in the stable of what would work for this. So it does vary kind of completely on the project and like I said, on the characters that they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, the people who are getting a lot of auditions, then it's like big gratitude and super grateful of all the auditions that come through because, I mean, you get to choose like who has those auditions.
I mean, there's a casting process that goes on with every project, like where it's, you kind of look at it and go, who I think would be right for this and who I want to hear. And every once in a while you'll go, you know what, I'm not sure about this, but I think kind of outside the box, I think this could be an interesting thought, and you see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, each individual project is cast as though like we're, mini casting directors in our own agency. I mean, that's kind of, we pick the folks that we think, have a shot at booking.
And you deal directly with the casting directors, and who else do you deal with mostly?
Sure.
And how's the protocol? Like, what's the process
on
your side?
For casting directors, on the commercial side, obviously, like when agencies have reached out to them to really specify, the number, they limit the numbers on who they get. So they'll take, folks from a handful of agencies around town. So we deal with them directly. Oftentimes we deal with the ad agency directly. We will, deal with producers and copywriters and folks like that to audition their projects for them and send it to them directly. Animation, gaming, obviously we're dealing with producers and casting directors in that world that we oftentimes will audition here first, and then at the callback stage they'll start to pick and choose who they like and then want to see in person. But those are the major, those are the folks that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and basically they'll give us their projects, what they're looking for, and we'll give them who we think's right for it, and we go from there.
Yeah, thank you. And I noticed voicebank.net, I used to refer everyone there, and I used to hear my reel on there, and so, but voicebank.net isn't around anymore. So where can people go to listen to other people's commercial and animation reels?
Yeah, sure. The Voice Casting Hub actually is a great new service that's coming up, and more producers are becoming aware of it and using it. And it's going to be a really great kind of upgrade even from VoiceBank once all their ducks are in a row as far as what they're doing. But that's the next great spot to go and be able to listen to those demos and pick and choose off of that. And you can also go to our, if you're looking at Vox Talent, you can go to our website, and we've got the demos up there and search engines that you can use depending on what you want and what you're looking for.
And a photo of you, and Nick mentioned your bio.
A very exciting bio in there. Yes, it's very in depth.
And then I was wondering, are there some favorite books or movies talent can watch about voiceovers, education and voiceover industry?
There's a great documentary that our client John Dimaggio helped produce about 5 years ago. It's called "I Know That Voice," and it's almost like a must watch if you're into VO, because it's got all the top talent in the business, which you can start to, one of the fun things about it is, some of your favorite characters you don't know are voiced by someone, so you're like, oh my God, they voiced that person, that character. Like it's fascinating in that sense, but then it's also very educational because there's casting directors that speak to their process and how that works, and the actors themselves will tell you about how they got into the business and what it takes on a day-to-day basis to be a voiceover artist and whatnot. So it's incredibly entertaining, but it also very invaluable to an artist who's looking to understand how the business works.
Very cool. cool. And then you guys are in the voiceover world, you're pretty well known and you've been around for quite a while. Is there like a philosophy that you guys have or an approach that you guys take? What do you think it is about you that stands out and why have you had so much longevity, do you feel?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think number one, it starts with talent. We've had great talent and we continue to, which is, that's step one, because, if you're a nice person, you do all this stuff, it doesn't matter if the folks can't come to you and get quality in return. That's what they're here for. So we've been very fortunate in that over the years that we've been able to have great clients that we can present to the folks. And I do think, and I think our philosophy is, it's a user-friendly philosophy, both on the client side and on the producer side. We're, never upset to talk to folks and get into things with them and try to be accessible. I think that's the toughest part these days, is that with so much going on and with the speed at which everything is cooking, to be able to still have that accessibility for both your buyer and client alike is very important. And that's something we take very seriously here. And hopefully the clients feel that way and the buyers do. But that's a kind of a big part of what we do. And one of the reasons, we're able to do that is kind of what I described before, and having a smaller list, and taking, we're never going to be managers. That's what managers are for. But we take a little bit more of a managerial approach than maybe some other agencies do. And because of that, we're able to do some of the things that, I just talked about, and makes that manageable. And that's just kind of the process that works for us and the way we want to go about doing this business. So we just try to be kind of true to ourselves and what our, what we think worked. And, so far so good. So we've been very fortunate.
Yeah. Sure. And I must say there's a lot of love here. I totally feel the love on all the levels. It's super healthy and there's a lot of love, and that's awesome.
That's very sweet of you to say. Yeah, it's because it's one of those things where, these are folks you spend more time with than your family, so you want to make sure that the environment is, we do a business that is incredibly fast paced, and there can be some stress involved, certainly, but there's no reason to me to create extra stress out of nothing and some inner office politics or anything like that. So we've been very fortunate about finding folks that, agree with the way we do business and try to permeate that throughout the company.
Yeah. And then I know you guys are always growing and expanding. Is there anything cool or interesting on the horizon for VOX?
Yeah, sure. There's always, there's always elements that you look at in terms of, we always know that this business is changing, and it always is changing. And that's the way it should be. You try to do what you can to stay on top of things where, obviously voiceover is our bread and butter. It's what we do. It's what we'll always do. But we've been able to expand into some other areas in terms of celebrity on camera endorsements, things, social media and those types of deals. And the thing that's always been important to us is that whatever thing we start to move on to and expand to, it only benefits our main core, which is the voiceover. So it's never at an expense of that. It's only to help build relationships that can only come back and help that as well. So those particular elements and avenues that we've kind of expanded on over the last few years have been great, because it really has done nothing but, kind of like I said, enhance those relationships in terms of voiceover and just create more opportunities in that world. Yeah.
And then maybe you could name a few movies or TV shows for people out there that are new or don't know a lot about the voiceover world that they'd be able to recognize.
Sure. Well, luckily most of America appears to have already recognized Incredibles 2, which is fantastic. Just very, very excited about that. Our client, Craig T. Nelson, is Mr. Incredible. So,
wow.
Nice. Exactly. And it's been, it's a great movie, and it's a ton of fun. And obviously it was, 14 years since the original, and people were, I think, excited and hungry for it. And to produce a great movie to go with that has been incredibly helpful. So definitely go out and check that out if you haven't already. That's one that we're all enjoying right now.
Cool. Very cool. Ironically, if someone were to hear this and they had the thought, and then they actually took the thought to another level and actually took the steps of the research and made proper demos and, quality demos, would it be okay for them to find the VOX address and mail you a CD of their commercial and or animation reel or promo reel?
It would actually all be to save everyone's money. Email is the best way to go about that these days. And you can go to our website and find the areas to go. And usually the VOX Facebook page is a great place to go and submit if you don't know anyone that can, refer you directly.
Okay.
Which is, the best way to get it through to us. But we will take a listen to demos as they come in.
Okay. So maybe they could mention in the subject line, I heard you on a podcast.
Absolutely.
Or TSP podcast or something, and then send it to you that way. that could give people an opportunity. No promises, but it could give people an opportunity.
But any frame of reference like that just helps. Absolutely.
And then I would just say, because again, for me, when I was brand new to this world, luckily I had Kay to show me the steps. Yeah. I would definitely say for people who know that they have a unique voice, to really, really do the research. We live in an information age. There's so much information out there. There is royalty-free music, and thankfully I had somebody who was able to give me some music to really make it sound like a professional reel. But do your research, go onto YouTube, and go onto different websites and listen to people's reels and take your time, because it is a fun world. Like, even when I get turned down for auditions, I never feel upset about it. Right. I laugh. I read these auditions and it's fun for me. Yeah. And it is a fun world, and it's a great community. And I think at the key of it, that's why it's important for people to really, if you know, hey, I have a unique voice, my mother tells me all the time that I should do something with it, then take the steps, take your time, because it is a really, really, really great community.
And it is a great point about the fact that it's all there. It's all there for you, and not just in the research that you can be done on online and finding out about the business itself, but watch commercials, pay more attention, and watch animated movies, pay attention, and get a feel for what's working and what people are hiring. It's not a secret. It's all out there if you want to consume it. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I say too. It's like, listen to commercials. Yeah. Would you be that mom? Would you be like the teenager? Back to school, or
start to get a feel for where maybe you fit within the world. Yeah.
Make a list of commercials that would be good for you, and then separately animation type voices. Take some months to prepare the voices.
Absolutely. And if you're gonna, the one thing I would also say too is, if you do, you want to reach out to an agent or a casting director or something along those lines, and you want to present yourself, do the work first, because you never get a second chance to make a first impression, like they say. So if you get, hey, I did a couple of things online and I want to see what you think, it's probably not going to be taken very seriously. Like, get that demo produced, get all that stuff taken care of, so that it looks like you're serious about being in this game, because it's not going to, because of the sheer volume of folks doing it these days, if you're not serious, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely, luckily, going back to Bill, I was able to take his group classes, and I remember really not only how they helped me hone in and find my voice, but also there was a guy in one of the group sessions that I did where he went to a voiceover class, and he had studied, and he had an amazing voice. And then Bill goes, "Where did you study?" And he tells me, he's like, "Yeah, don't ever go back there." Right. So to go back to your original point is you really want to know that, whoever you're working with is quality, but also really take your time, because that presentation, when you reach out to people, luckily I was able to connect with Alyssa. I was at Bill's studio. She heard my voice. I took the steps and I followed up. Right. But I also didn't just say, okay, cool, I have a cool voice and here's some music, here you go. Right. I took several months. I was taking classes and really wanted it, and gratefully and thankfully I'm part of the team. So it's a very, very valid point.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter like how much money you spend. So, it's like he said, it's the quality. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up here. Okay. Just two quick questions. Where in the world haven't you been yet that you really want to go?
I have not been to Ireland yet, and being an Irish lad, I look forward to that. It looks like I'm actually going to go in a month or so. So I'm pretty excited. Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, and then the last question is, I know you love pizza. So,
the word's out, is it? Yes.
What's one of your favorite pizza places in Los Angeles?
Honestly, one of my favorite places is right down the street here. It's called Rocco's here on Wilshire.
Okay,
and,
sure.
These guys, New Yorkers who came over almost about the time I came here. The restaurant opened up about a year after I was at the company. It was called TGI, which is now VOX, obviously. And they literally make one of the best pizzas here in LA. It's because pizza can be difficult to find here at times, and I just moved down further down the South Bay, and I'm still searching. So it's tougher to find, but that's one of the best places I've had here for sure.
Okay, yum. And then I don't know, have you had a VOX party there?
We haven't had a VOX party there. No, probably not big enough, unfortunately, to fit everyone that would need to be in. So yeah,
got it. Okay.
I have my own VOX party there about twice a week. But yeah,
private party.
Exactly.
The President Pizza Party. Private.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Don,
No, thanks for having me, guys. It was
You're
fun.
amazing. Okay, see you
Awesome.
next time.
All right, you got it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Kitty over and out.